The Insta360 X6 is here, and this clip was created automatically by the camera and the app. No reframing, no editing, zero edit. One of the X6's particular strengths. And the result is good, significantly better than with previous tools. The X6 features 3 different automated editing functions. I'll show you how they work a little later. But apart from that, what else is new with the X6? And just how good is the camera really? To find out, I compared the X6 to the best 360 cameras currently available, the Insta360 X5 and the DJI Osmo 360. The Osmo 360 II is due to be released soon, but only in China. There is no information yet regarding an international release, and a launch in the US is unlikely. The X5 and the Osmo 360 are therefore currently the best cameras for comparison. There are 10 categories that are important for the quality of a 360 camera. Take a close look at all the categories, because there are a few interesting surprises. At the end, I'll tell you whether I think an upgrade makes sense and what special offers are currently available. The X6 was provided to me by Insta360 for testing purposes, but this video does not include any additional paid sponsorship. For the first time in a long while, Insta360 has completely redesigned the body of its 360 camera with the X6. The X6 no longer has that very elongated shape. It's slightly wider than the X5, but significantly shorter. In terms of form alone, it's a compromise between the X5 and the Osmo 360. It still works well with a selfie stick, and the slightly shorter form factor is better suited for mounting on a helmet or chest mount. In terms of volume, it's about the same size as the Osmo 360 and slightly smaller than the X5. At 195 grams, it weighs slightly more than the Osmo 360 and just a bit less than the X5. Especially when compared to the Osmo 360, the X6 has a few key advantages. It features a significantly larger, high-quality OLED display. The X5's display is similar in size, but its vertical format makes it less suitable for single-lens shots. To make room for the X6 large OLED display, the physical buttons were moved to the side. In their place, 2 virtual buttons were added at the bottom edge. Similar to modern smartphones, they provide haptic feedback when pressed. If needed, you can even turn the entire screen into a record button. The display and camera feel very high quality, and the virtual buttons work very well. So well in fact that I hardly ever use the physical buttons during my test recordings. Of course, that will be different in the winter when wearing gloves. And of course, the lens can be replaced on your own. Similar to the X5, there's a lens replacement kit that lets you replace a damaged lens on your own. And that's important, even though Insta360 says the lenses have been reinforced and are supposed to be significantly less prone to scratches, the protruding lenses are still a weak point of a 360 camera, since they can be easily damaged. What I also like is that replacing a lens is now much easier than on the X5. And the lenses are certainly one of the Osmo 360's biggest weaknesses in this comparison. On the one hand, you can't replace them yourself. You have to send the camera in if they're damaged. On the other hand, the Osmo 360's lenses can fog up. For example, when there are extreme temperature differences, such as when used in water. I also ran a similar test with the X6, and unlike the Osmo 360, it doesn't fog up. Incidentally, the X6 is waterproof to a depth of up to 20 meters without an additional dive case. That's more than the X5 or the Osmo 360, which is only waterproof to a depth of 10 meters. It all looks good. Smaller, very well built, a high quality display. But ultimately, what matters most is the image quality and how the footage looks. Whenever a new camera is released, there is always discussion about sponsored reviews. For me, the solution is quite simple. I'll explain the key differences to you and show you several longer comparison clips that are unedited except for reframing. This way, you'll be able to form your own independent opinion. The X6 features 2 all-new 1/1.1-inch sensors and improved chips. The new sensors are completely new square Sony sensors, designed specifically for Insta360. At 1/1.1 inches, the new sensors are the same size as those in the Osmo 360 and larger than the X5 sensors, which measure 1/1.28 inches. When we compare the footage from the X6 with that from the X5, only minor differences are noticeable at first glance. Both clips were reframed using the field of view Mega. Interestingly, the X5's field of view is slightly wider, but there are a few other interesting differences. The colors differ slightly, especially here in the shots of this mountain meadow. The X6 colors appear more natural. They more closely match reality. The meadow is greener in reality, just as it appears on the X6, and does not have the orange tones of the X5. Here's a comparison shot I took with an iPhone, but that's perhaps the most noticeable difference in the colors. Much greater and more significant are the differences in dynamic range. Compared to the X5, the X6 has a clearly improved dynamic range, and highlights are preserved much better. You can see that, for example, here in the background with the sun, and even more so in this shot here in the office. You can clearly see how the details in the window are more blown out on the X5, or in this example with the castle. And there is something else that stands out here. In some cases, the X5 shows unsightly blue lens flares. That's not the case with the X6. In my opinion, the X6 comes with very high quality lenses, and I've actually never noticed any unsightly lens flares, even when shooting against the sun. For me personally, this is one of the most important improvements in image quality on the X6. By the way, there are no longer any settings for adaptive tone or HDR on the X6. I see hardly any differences when it comes to detail. Here's a comparison at 400%. Both shots show a similar level of detail. How does it compare to the Osmo 360? Compared to the X5, the Osmo 360 produces shots with slightly less saturation. For these comparison shots, I also used the standard field of view on both cameras. And these comparison shots don't look all that different either. It's interesting that the Osmo 360 often uses more magenta tones than the X6. That wasn't always the case in comparisons between DJI and Insta360 cameras. You can also see that in this shot of the mountain trail. The X6 shot renders the meadow significantly greener than the Osmo 360's. Sometimes when shooting against the light, the Osmo 360 tends to underexpose the shot slightly. This makes the subject appear somewhat underexposed, as in this shot here. But overall, both cameras take very good shots. The Osmo 360's dynamic range is better than that of the X5 and very similar to that of the X6. There are only very minor differences. In this shot taken here in the office, the X6 performs only slightly better. The black t-shirt shows slightly more detail in the X6 shot, and the highlights are also preserved slightly better. Similar to the X5, the Osmo 360 can also have issues with lens flares in certain situations. And in this comparison, you can see that the X6 handles lens flares significantly better than the Osmo 360. There is one important topic we haven't even touched on yet. Just like the Osmo 360, the X6 can shoot in 8K at up to 50 frames per second. The X5 offers a maximum frame rate of 30 frames per second in 8K. This is a significant upgrade, especially for those who prefer a slightly smoother, more natural look. On the other hand, I'm a bit disappointed with the 360 slow motion footage. The X6 shoots in 4K at up to 100 frames per second. Just like the Osmo 360, the X5 is the only one of the three cameras capable of shooting in 4K at 120 frames per second. On top of that, I find that the X6 image quality in 4K 100 isn't optimal, and that the X5 in particular produces better slow motion footage in 4K. We'll see that fortunately, when it comes to slow motion, the X6 has a significant advantage in single lens mode. And the X6 has another feature that's been long overdue for Insta360. It supports 10-bit log recording, even in 8K. The X5 does have a log color profile, but only in 8-bit. Furthermore, the X5's log profile isn't available in 8K, only in 5.7K. The Osmo 360, on the other hand, also features a 10-bit log profile that lets you shoot in 8K. However, this is D-Log-M, and as you can see here, D-Log-M is nowhere near as flat as the X6 new log profile. As a result, the dynamic range of the X6 log profile is better than that of D-Log-M on the Osmo 360. I converted these two clips using the manufacturer's LUTs. And unlike the Osmo 360, the X6 produces a very neutral image that's well suited for further processing. But the X6 has another important advantage when it comes to color profiles. It's the first 360 camera capable of capturing 8K 360 footage in 10-bit HDR Dolby Vision. This means footage where, in particular, the highlights can be displayed much brighter. To take advantage of this, however, you'll need an HDR-capable display, such as the screen of a modern smartphone or a modern TV. As you can see here in this direct comparison, the HDR footage has significantly more contrast and looks more realistic. As my YouTube review isn't an HDR video, I can't show you the full dynamic range, but I get the impression that HDR videos sometimes look a bit overexposed, even when viewed on a smartphone. Insta360 could do with making some improvements in this area. You can reframe your 360 Dolby Vision video as usual and export it as an HDR Dolby Vision clip. This is a great feature for anyone who frequently watches their videos on a smartphone or TV. The X6 has also made slight improvements in low light performance. The X6 is the best 360 camera to date for shooting in low light. Similar to the X5 and the Osmo 360, it has its own dedicated shooting mode for use in low light. However, the difference compared to the X5 isn't that big. Especially considering the size of its sensor, the X5 already takes very good shots in low light. it's also extremely dark here. Actually, you shouldn't really be filming in such lighting conditions, but this scenario is simply better suited for comparison shots and to better highlight the differences. As I said, the difference compared to the X5's footage really isn't that big. The X6 footage has slightly less image noise and is a bit sharper. And here too, you can see that the issues with lens flares have been resolved. The same applies when compared to the Osmo 360. The Osmo 360's footage is darker and lacks some detail. As mentioned at the beginning, the Osmo 360 has sensors the same size as the X6. This means that the performance of the pure video mode is simply the deciding factor, as was also evident from the X5's good results. But you can't say that the X6 lead is huge. Interestingly, the differences in single lens mode are perhaps greater overall than in 360 mode. The X6 clearly performs better here. This is true both when compared to the Osmo 360 and when compared to the X5. The colors in the X6 recordings look better and they also show more detail. And that brings us to a topic where the X6 has made great progress. The single lens mode. As we've just seen, the X6 clearly performs best in low light conditions among all three cameras in single lens mode. But that's not the only improvement Insta360 has made in single lens mode. All three cameras can capture flat footage with just one lens, which you no longer need to reframe. And just like the Osmo 360, the X6 can now also capture flat footage in 5K at up to 60 frames per second. On the X5, the maximum is 4K 60. As you can see here on the camera, with the X6 you can set the field of view relatively freely in single lens mode and also enable distortion correction. That's really cool. The footage in single lens mode looks good, but I've also noticed that the Osmo 360 and the X5 apply more HDR processing. The highlights can blow out a bit more quickly on the X6 in single lens mode. I don't know if that might change with a future firmware update. What I'm really excited about is that with the X6 in single lens mode, you can now also shoot slow motion footage in 4K at up to 120 frames per second. This is also possible with the Osmo 360, but only in the extremely wide boost mode. With the X6, 4K 120 is available in single lens mode regardless of the field of view. This means the X6 is increasingly capable of replacing a traditional action camera. High quality slow motion footage has been one of the few remaining exclusive features of a standard action camera. Of course, all three cameras still have several other shooting modes, such as for time lapses or hyperlapses. Just like the Osmo 360, the X6 can take 360 photos with up to 120 megapixels. I've done a comparison of a few photos here in the office, as many people are interested in indoor 360 photos. This is a heavily cropped version of the photos. Compared to the Osmo 360, the X6 has a significantly higher dynamic range, also because it features an HDR mode. The level of detail is also slightly better than on the Osmo 360. Compared to the X5, there's a noticeable improvement in detail, partly because the X5's photo has significantly fewer megapixels. There have also been improvements to the bullet time mode. The bullet time mode is now available for the first time in 8K at up to 100 frames per second. But I find the Instaframe mode, which is exclusive to the X6 and X5, much more interesting. In Instaframe mode, you can select a subject and track it directly in the camera, much like you would with a gimbal camera. You'll then get a perfectly reframed flat clip in 4K with the invisible selfie stick effect. No more editing required. The tracking and reframing are therefore performed directly in the camera. If needed, you can also simultaneously record a 360 backup clip in 8K, which you can reframe yourself. Just in case you're not satisfied with the flat clip. Simultaneous recording in 4K and 8K. That's not possible with the X5. When recording a flat clip and a 360 clip at the same time, the resolution of the X5 must be reduced to 1080. And that brings us to a topic that sets the X6 and Insta360 apart. The goal is to increasingly relieve users of the need to edit and reframe their footage. After all, reframing is still considered the biggest drawback of a 360 camera. To take the reframing off the user's hands, the X6 supports a new, completely revamped auto-edit feature in the app. You select a few clips and the app does the rest. Until now, the results were rather average. That has now actually been improved. By the way, the intro clip was created using the new auto-edit feature. But there are two more new features. With the new AI Director feature, the X6 analyzes all clips recorded that day at the end of the day, and while charging, identifies highlights and automatically transfers a custom-generated daily vlog to your smartphone. All fully automatically. You don't actually have to do anything except activate the feature. Everything runs on the camera and app. No upload to the cloud is required for this feature. With AI Director, you don't even have to select the clips yourself. This feature automatically compiles a montage of some of the best shots of the day, which you can share straight away. In contrast, the new cloud feature, Moments Pro, which works in conjunction with Google Gemini, is quite different. After you've uploaded your clips to the cloud, Moments Pro becomes a kind of personal editor. The clips are are analyzed and various editing schemes are suggested. You can then select different tags or protagonists and start the edit. This process takes place entirely in the cloud, and you'll be notified as soon as the video is ready. The feature is interesting and works well, but there's a catch. You'll naturally need a cloud subscription to take advantage of it. Depending on the keyword, it can also pick out key scenes from older, perhaps even forgotten recordings. All three features represent an upgrade to the previous auto-edit function. Generally speaking, in my opinion, it's not about getting the best possible result from your footage. Rather, it's about getting a good montage of your footage quickly and easily, without having to do the editing yourself if you don't feel like it. And the results can be really cool. But that isn't a feature exclusive to the X6. All new automated editing features will also be available for the X5. If you'd like to find out more about the new auto-edit features, have a look at my tutorial on the subject. I'll include a link to it in the description. With all these new features and the smaller form factor, the question of recording time naturally arises. So how long can the X6 shoot? And are there any overheating issues? I ran a test here in the office at 8K 30 at a warm 26 degrees Celsius and without any airflow. Under these unfavorable conditions, there were no overheating issues whatsoever. And the X6 was able to shoot for an incredible 2 hours and 38 minutes. That's 1 hour and 10 minutes longer than the Osmo 360 and the X5. Only the X5 had overheating issues under these conditions and shut down after 56 minutes due to overheating. Of course, it's worth noting that in real-world use and with airflow, none of the three cameras will have overheating problems. For most people, overheating will therefore remain more of a theoretical issue, but Insta360 has gotten everything right this time when it comes to overheating and battery life. To capture shots like this one or this underwater shot, a 360 camera requires very specific accessories. And in this regard, not only the X6, but also the X5 have a major, if not decisive advantage. It's true that all sticks and mounts are compatible with all 360 cameras, but Insta360 is the only manufacturer so far to offer an invisible dive case for its 360 cameras. And only with such a dive case can you take 360 shots underwater, since underwater shots place entirely different demands on lens stitching. Unfortunately, the dive case for the X6 wasn't available at the time of my test, which is why you're seeing footage from the X5 here. However, a dive case is now also available for the X6. Apart from that, there are several remote controls, ND filters, and other special mounts and accessories available for the X6. And have you seen this? The Luna Ultra's POV head tracker. It's worn like a headset and is also compatible with the X6. When using the Instaframe mode, the framing automatically adjusts to the movements of your head. Personally, I wouldn't want to do without a dive case. For me personally, the lack of an invisible dive case is one of the Osmo 360's major weaknesses. I know that many users aren't particularly interested in audio quality, but Insta360 has been constantly working on improving the audio quality of its cameras. And the X6 is no exception. The X6 features a new windproof 360 microphone. The camera has microphone openings on all sides that are protected from the wind. The X6 then features a new intelligent audio mode. But of course, for even better audio quality, there are external microphones available for all three cameras. And the best choice for the X6 is the relatively new Mic Pro. What else is important? What other differences are there between the three cameras? The X6 also comes with a very special feature, 3D spatial capture. Put simply, this is a technique that creates a 3D model from a video or photo, a 3D model within which you can move around freely. This is a particularly important upgrade for anyone who uses the 360 camera professionally, for example for virtual tours. You don't just get a photo where you can look around freely, you get a high-quality 3D model in which you can move around freely. For example, a house that you can explore virtually and freely. For many people, this is certainly a very cool feature. Unfortunately, 3D spatial capture is not available in the US at launch for technical reasons. However, this is set to change. And for me, very important, unlike the X5, the X6 finally has internal storage. At 47 GB, it's only about half as much as the Osmo 360, but it's enough in case you forget your SD card. And of course, the apps are important too, especially when compared to other manufacturers. The Insta360 apps are still the best in terms of feature set. This applies to both the smartphone app and the desktop app. That said, you can of course also reframe your clips quite well with the DJI Memo app. I think the X6 has turned out to be a fantastic camera that gets almost everything right. And the new auto edit features and 3D spatial capture expand the functionality of a 360 camera. Of course, that comes at a price. The Insta360 X6 starts at $699 in the US and at €699 in Europe. That's the only real downside of the X6 in this comparison, since the X5 is already available starting at $550 in the US or €590 in Europe. The Osmo 360 is similarly priced, but you can find it cheaper from third-party retailers like Amazon. You'll find links to all three cameras in the description below. If you use the link for the X6, you'll also receive an exclusive creator gift bag. This should be an extremely useful double lens kit that lets you replace 2 damaged lenses. This is an exclusive limited time offer, so you want to act fast if you're interested. If you have an older camera, there's also a trade-in program you can take advantage of. This applies to DJI and GoPro cameras as well. I'll include a link to this in the description too. So what would I recommend? In my opinion, the X6 has turned out to be a perfect 360 camera. It has hardly any flaws, and aside from slow motion in 360 mode, there is hardly anything more you could ask for right now. I really like the new lenses and the fact that all the lens flare issues have been fixed. The new automated editing options are cool too. It's basically a flawless camera, though it doesn't have any absolutely standout killer features. If you're buying a new camera and can afford it, I'd go with the X6. But if you want to save some money, the X5 and the Osmo 360 are still very good alternatives. Give me a like as feedback if you found this video interesting. A detailed beginner's tutorial on the X6 will follow soon. So stay tuned and see you next time.